Hello friends, it's Shari. Today I have a really fun pull and slide surprise card to share using the Really Rainbow paper collection and the Little Woodland Library Friends stamps. So I have the book collection dies here, and what I'm actually going to do is take the Yellow Brick Road 12 by 12 paper because we have those wide stripes, and I'm going to use this paper to cut all my books from. This way I know that I am going to have a nice rainbow of books and they all are going to coordinate perfectly with my papers because I am using that pattern paper to cut them out. So I have my little stack of books here. I'm just kind of arranging them in the way that I want them to be. I actually did cut another of that book on top out of some pink, so I just had 7 books instead of 6. Now for these, I do have to do a little bit of assembling. For the 2 books where you can see the pages, I cut the pages from speckled eggshell cardstock. I think that's a really fun color to use for the pages like this because it has that natural look with those little speckles. For the books where you're going to see things through the openings, I just use that lighter blue to layer under the darker blue. For the green, I actually use that lighter blue as well. We're just going to see that through those 2 tiny little openings. Then of course I need to assemble my yellow book here, again with those pages cut from some speckled eggshell cardstock. And then for my orange book, I cut the other book that I'm layering behind out of that red color. So we're going to see that red peek through those 2 little openings in that book. And then you can see there I added the pink book on top to make it a little bit taller. Now I just have a piece of cream colored cardstock here. This is cut to 1 inch by 3 inches, and this is where I'm going to build my stack of books. So I'm just going to put some adhesive all over this little strip here so that I can stack my books on top, and it will make my whole stack of books act like one big piece, which is going to work perfectly for that pull and slide because these are going to kind of pop up and be floating above that fold. So I'm starting at the top to make sure that I have that covered up with the pink. Then I have that kind of reddish pink, my orange book, my yellow book, then my green book. This is why I like kind of figuring out their order ahead of time, and I'm just kind of stacking them so they're not perfectly stacked, just like a stack of books, and that was the perfect size for them all to fit on, but if it was a little longer, I could have trimmed it off. Now for the main part of my pull and slide surprise, I'm using this fun 12 by 12 paper, also from the Really Rainbow collection, but it has that notebook paper look with those rainbow lines. And so I'm going to cut this all the way in that top left corner so I get that fun little notebook look with that double line. And then this is the other side of that same paper, and what I'm actually going to do is line this up so my lines line up. And I'm going to mark it with a pencil so I can trim this down, and this will be the piece that layers on the back. So when you pull that pull and slide open, we're going to see the exact same pattern, but it's going to be in the blue. Now, if you're not lining up a pattern like I am, you just need to cut a piece that is 3.5 inches wide by 4 3/4 tall to fit behind the pull and slide. So here are my 2 pieces. I have the background piece, I have the front piece, and now I need to add a little bit to the front piece so I have a place for my books to set. And there is a little fold line down here. I have not folded it yet, but that's where I want my books to be. So I'm pulling out the coffee table 12 by 12 paper. This is that light brown wood grain pattern. I'm just going to trim off a little strip, and then I'm using the front panel of my pull and slide surprise to cut the bottom here. Now this is a little taller than I need it to be, so what I'm actually going to do is piece my 2 pieces together. I will flip them over, this is the back side, and I'm just going to hold them together with a little piece of removable tape. And this will just allow me to trim them down together like they're one piece. So now I can just line up that score line with the wire on my wire cutter and trim that off. So there is a die in this die set that will cut that little skinny rectangle that I'm pulling off right here, but I wanted my patterns to match up in my wood grain, so that's why I did this extra step of just trimming it down myself. Now I can add some adhesive to this bottom piece and layer that onto my panel on the front. And then the little piece will layer on the little foot, so I'm going to go ahead and fold it. So the top fold needs to be a valley fold. And I'll just grab my bone folder and reinforce that fold. The middle fold is a mountain, And then that little foot at the bottom is another valley fold. So you can see here when I fold it, you'll see that score line that I know you couldn't see until I folded this. And that is where that little piece right there that's hanging out on the right side is going to go. So it's going to be kind of that little foot or the very top of my little desk. So I'll just add some adhesive to this and layer it right onto that little piece right below that fold. Again, just matching up that wood grain for this paper. So now it all looks like it's part of the desk. Now for my images, I'm using images from the Little Woodland Library Friends and Little Woodland Library. I have that little mole from the original set, and I am going to stamp out the turtles, the mole, the hedgehog, the little worm, and that stack of books. Now that stack of books you're going to see me use here in just a little bit, but it's not going to be on the front of my card. But I am using the stack of books that are on the front of my card as a guide for my colors. Now this little stack of books is obviously a little too small to go with the books that is going to be on the front of my card. So this is going to be a little surprise inside the card. Instead of a gift card being the surprise, I'm actually going to make a cute little bookmark to go in this card. Now I'm moving on to my little critters here, coloring their books to match my stack of books. I just love this little hedgehog reading the book with his glasses. He is just so cute. So I colored in his body and now I'm going back to his quills. I like using the E70s for this for a little bit different color. Now I'm moving on to my cute little turtles. I think they're so adorable. I love the little one on top of the big one, like they're helping each other reach the books on the top shelf. That's how I like to think of it. I'm just doing a little shading up against their shell and on the underside of their face. I'm actually going to jump back up to the little mole up here because I realized I didn't finish him. I've got some warm grays for his paws and a little bit of warm gray for the shadow, and then I'll blend it out with a slightly lighter one. Now back to my turtles, I'm coloring in everybody's glasses, and then I'm going to use some darker shades for their shells so we have a little bit of variety in their colors. And then what I like to do on the markings on the shell is kind of trace that a little bit and give it a little bit of shadow because we know those shells in real life have some texture to it and gives it a little more realistic look. Now, of course, I need to color my little worm, and I'm just using the same colors I used on my turtles. Then I cut all these out with the coordinating dies, and now I'm ready to start to assemble. But first, I want to stamp my sentiment, and what I'm going to do is just layer these two together and kind of pop this up so I can see where things are going to go. So the little hedgehog's going to go inside, and then my sentiment's going to go above him. So it is revealed when we pull open that pull and slide. What's really nice about this paper is it's got lines. It's like notebook paper, so I can easily line up my sentiment nice and straight. So I figured out where that needs to go, pick that up with the door of my MISTI, and I'm just going to go ahead and stamp that on the inside before I assemble my pull and slide surprise. So the pull and slide surprise die has these little strips that the die creates. These are just spacers to create a little channel for that card to kind of slide in there. I actually cut 2 sets this time. I'm going to double stack these just for a little more space because I am going to be tucking that bookmark in there that has the books on it, and I just wanted to make sure there was enough space for everything to slide around. So I'm just double stacking those little spacers just to give a little more room. And I'm just using liquid glue to glue these right along that outside edge. Now, once these are in place, I can add my card. So I'm putting a piece of double-sided tape right on the back of that little foot fold, so it's below the fold, and I'm just going to trim that off. Then what I'm going to do is line up the part inside that slides. I'm lining up that tab, so I'm lining up the top edges with the tab in the center. I'm going to flip it over, pull off that liner paper, and just stick it down. And now it is in the right place to slide just as it should. And now I can add this to my background piece where I've already stamped my sentiment. So you only want glue on those spacers on the sides, and then I did a tiny little bit right along the bottom. No glue at the top, no glue in the middle, because we want this to move around freely. So I'm just going to stack these together and press that glue down, and now it slides perfectly. I can add my little hedgehog who's going to be sitting down here reading a book. It's kind of like you pull the books back to reveal this little guy hiding back here reading his book, which I think is really cute. So now I need to add my books, and this is why I created that piece of cardstock on the back. And I'm just tracing right where that fold is so I know where to put my glue. You only want it on the bottom half of this stack, and then the top half is going to be floating above the fold when you pull it up, just like this. Now I can add the rest of my little critters here. So my little mole is going to be reading up here at the top. Then I have my little worm. He's going to be in the center where that yellow book is. I kind of move that book to the left a little bit so he looks like he has a little place to sit. And then, of course, the turtles. And for the turtles, I actually added some foam squares. You're going to see me add those foam squares. Make sure they're only on that center panel. We don't want any adhesive crossing over to that left side because we want this to move nice and freely. So they're sitting there at the bottom of the books. Now to create my card base, I wanted to continue that kind of rainbow to the background, but this time I'm switching up the direction of my stripes. I'm using more of that 12 by 12 piece, and I cut it to where I have a nice selection of color stripes on that background. Most of this will get covered up by the pull and slide surprise mechanism, so I really just am focusing on what we see on the edges. That's why I have that little pink and that little blue peeking out on each side. I also need to add the little decorative piece that goes on the top that tells the recipient to pull because it has that little arrow. And I just cut this piece from some storm cloud cardstock. So it's that nice dark gray. It's really going to stand out up there at the top amongst all the colorful colors on this card. So you just fold it in the center and then fold it over the top. So I glued that with liquid glue so it doesn't go anywhere. Now for my bookmark, I have a little strip of that striped notebook paper left over, and I'm cutting the tassel tag die from that to create my little bookmark. And for the tassel itself, I'm actually going to cut it from some of that leftover striped paper that I use for the background. And I think this is fun because when you use pattern paper like this, that's double-sided, you get some color on the inside of the tassel, which is a lot of fun as well. So I'm just rolling that through my fingers along that solid piece to get it to start to curl. Then I am adding some adhesive runner on the inside along that solid area across the top. And then you just need to get that roll kind of started. I did use my tweezers a little bit at first to get it started, to get a hold of it, but once it gets going, then you can just roll this up. And there is a little bit of a hole in the center, but that's okay. We want that because we need a place to put our twine to hold our tassel onto our tag. And I just like to fluff it out. See how you can see all those colors, which is super fun. Now I'm using some black twine for my tassel. You want to put it through this kind of star-shaped piece and then tie the knot. So that's going to be hidden on the inside. I'm going to trim off those tails a little bit. And then you can tuck this in there. Now, I made this wrong the first time, so I had to remake it. I knew exactly how to make this, I just wasn't thinking. I tied this knot in a loop the first time, and then the second time I forgot to put it through the star thing, so third time's a charm. I added a little bit of dry adhesive along that top. I used liquid adhesive the last time I did this. I think the dry adhesive is better because it sticks immediately, and it was a lot less messy. And so I curled down all those little fingers down around the outside, and then this little trim piece will cover up that and make it look nice and neat. So I used the adhesive runner for this, and then on the very last I'm going to add a dot. That way I know it's going to hold nice and secure, and I'll just roll that over and hold it with my tweezers while that liquid glue dries. Now back to my little tag I cut earlier. This is where I'm adding the little books to match the books on the front of my card. And then for the top part of this bookmark, I actually grabbed the Dream Big stamp set. This is a little older, but these have great book sentiments because they are also meant for bookmarks. And I liked the sentiment that said books are true magic. There is a solid heart in the little Woodland Library Friends. I stamped that at the top. And I also added that little yay to the background where my little hedgehog is. So now I can thread that loop through the hole at the top of my tag and then thread my tassel back through itself. And now I have a cute little bookmark to add to my pull and slide surprise. So when you pull this up, then the bookmark will be revealed. I did put a tiny little glue dot on this to hold it in place, but honestly, it kind of stays down in there anyway. So I like that the tassel kind of comes out. It's kind of like peeking out like, what? Something cool's happening in here. We've got this tassel hanging out, and it goes with the books really well too, I think. And I felt like it needed a little bit of embellishment, so of course some little pink hearts were in order. I love that little pink heart on the book itself. I added a couple to the inside with my little hedgehog. My glue was kind of globbing out. I took it on a plane recently, so it's kind of being a little temperamental. And then I wanted to add a few to that panel that pulls out as well, because once you remove the bookmark, it needed a little something extra happening there. So here's my finished card. When you pull it open, you get that fun sentiment, and it reveals this fun bookmark that you can pull out and use in your books, which I think is really fun. And here is another look at that pull and slide surprise with the book collection and a cute little bookmark that goes inside. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.